Okay, we'll get started with our Compass Board of Directors meeting for August 17th. Do we still have our echo?
We're having some feedback in the room, so I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves quickly, please. All right, I think it sounds okay. Thank you. Okay. All right, I think we're good now. So if you need to speak, you can feel free to unmute yourselves. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll call this regular meeting of the Compass Board of Directors to order. We'll ask for a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Drew Alexander.
Here.
Rod Beck on the way. Jason Brinkman. Zach Brooks.
Here.
John Brunel. Darrell Bruner. Mayor Bruner, I think I see you online. Bree Brush. Bob Callahan. Trevor Chadwick.
Here.
Stephen Hunt.
Here.
Bud Corbis. Kathy Corliss. Ryan Davidson.
Here.
Tom Daly. Corey Dickard. Or Daryl. Yep. Daryl Romine. Justin Lucas.
Here.
Kent Goldthorpe. Jimmy Halliburton.
Here.
Al Hofer. Brad Holton.
Here.
Dan Heyer.
Here.
Bill Jacobs. Chelsea Johnson. Lindy Lindstrom. Mary May.
Here.
Matt Newton.
You're still muted. I'm here. Sorry.
Thank you. Tricia Nilsson. Tim O'Meara. John Overton.
Here.
Eric Phillips.
Here.
Brad Pike.
Here.
Tom Points. David Porterfield. Matt Qualls. David Reinhardt. Dale Reynolds. Michael Rocco.
Present.
Crystal Rogers.
Here.
Charlie Roundtree.
Here.
Kristen Ryan. Jennifer Salmonson.
Here.
David Miles. Dave Left.
Here.
Joe Steer.
Here.
Clay Tucker.
Here.
Leslie Van Beek. Cody Lund. 1 second, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item 2, open discussion announcements. Greg's got a couple.
Mr. Chair, I have just 2 things. First, I want to announce or remind, if you haven't seen emails about this yet, that the 2026 Leadership in Motion Awards nomination period is now open. So nominations are being accepted in a number of different categories for projects, individuals, and businesses for work conducted from July of 2025 through June of 2026. Nominations are open, will be accepted through noon Friday, September 25th, and will be presented at the December Board Holiday Luncheon. All the information and a link to the nomination form is on Compass's website, compassidaho.org. If you do have any questions, please contact Amy Left. Mr. Chair, second item. I just want to let the board know we will have a more formal presentation from Federal Highway in October. But we did want to let the board know that Compass completed and passed our certification review. That process played out in April, and we got the formal notification that we are now officially recertified as a Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is always a good step. But we'll have a real presentation, but I did want to let the board know that we did go through that process and completed that earlier this year.
Okay, with that, is there any questions or comments about the consent agenda? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Motion and a second.
Keep the mic.
Are there any comments? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And we'll turn the mic to its rightful owner.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your courtesy. I apologize to my colleagues for being a little late. Those things happen. We're going to have to modify our communities in motion program. Or maybe the tip. Where are we at? Special items. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah. Go ahead.
for the Finance Committee, first order of business, we elected Mayor Trevor Chadwick as Finance Committee Vice Chair. Second, we reviewed and approved the variance reports for the first and second quarters of fiscal 2026. The third item, we reviewed and recommended approval of revision 3 of the fiscal year 2026 Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. Number 4, we reviewed and recommended approval of the fiscal year 2027 Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. And we also reviewed the reports of disbursements made from April 4th, 2026 to August 5th, 2026. And lastly, we approved the 2026 fiscal year 2026 audit engagement with Soren CPAs.
That concludes your
That
report.
would conclude my report, Mr.
Are there any questions to our finance chairman about his report? Any questions on the bridge? Any questions in the room? Okay, hearing none, thank you. We'll advance to the first action item, adopt a resolution 14-2026 to approve FY 27 Unified Planning and Work Program Budget. Meg's going to give us a report. Go ahead, Meg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Meg Sennon, Director of Operations with Compass. This is an action item for you today. Starts on page 76 in your packet. Just a quick reminder on the process. We started back in March. We looked at some 5-year projections in the Finance Committee, and they also recommended the annual dues, which were approved by you in April. As the Finance Chair said, Finance Committee looked at a preliminary draft in June and recommended approval in July, which brings us to today, asking for your approval of the budget. Should that happen, it will be forwarded on to the Idaho Transportation Department and Federal Highways Administration and Transit Administration for their approval, and we'll be ready to start our fiscal year on October 1. So the packet includes all of the financial worksheets, a revenue and expense summary, a summary of the funding sources, and that shows how all of our federal dollars and local dollars are allocated to our various programs and activities, summaries of the direct and indirect expenses, and also how the work days of our 19 professional staff are allocated. Also in the packet are the program worksheets. This lists the tasks and timeline for each of the programs, as well as a summary of the dollars for that program. I'm going to talk just on the revenue and expense summary, which is on page 81 in your packet, but I'm happy to answer questions about any part of the document. So beginning with revenues, on the left side of page 81 is your member dues. The axis on the left side of this chart is dollars, the right side is population, and you can see that the general member dues shown by the blue bar have a gradual increase over time that follows the increase in population. We have added in fiscal year 26, Elmore County and Boise County in the year before, causing some of that increase as well, but primarily due to population increase. These are the dues that were approved by you in April. Next section is our federal grants, and the first item listed is the carry forward of our fiscal year 2026 consolidated planning grant. These are dollars that we didn't quite entirely program in 2026, and we'll carry forward just a little bit of that funding into 27. We also have our 1.8 million in consolidated planning grant funds, matches up with the amount in the transportation improvement program. The current transportation reauthorization bill has been introduced, called Build America 250. We don't expect that to be taken up in the really short term, but the Senate has passed a continuing resolution to take us through mid-December. Should the House pass that, we would continue at this funding level. So that's what we're assuming. Next few items are our STBG off the top funds. We have our planning funds, which that increase you approved back in April as well. And then we have some special projects, one-time projects, our transportation priorities poll, fiscal impact tool update, and performance measure update, performance measure framework update, all of those kind of one-time off the top dollars. We have 2 lines for the transportation system management and operations plan update, and then the smart corridors pilot will go together with that as one project, but we have 2 buckets of funding. We have our STPG dollars for Communities in Motion 2055. That total funding was about $693,000. This is what remains that we're carrying forward. That plan is expected to come before you for adoption in fiscal year 28 in December. And then finally, wrapping up our Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation project known as SPHERES. We expect that to be finished up in 27 as well. So carrying forward those dollars for a total of about $4 million in federal funding. Next up is a smaller pot of other contracts and agreements. We have our annual orthophotography flight, which is covered by contributions from the participants, some interest income on our fund balances. And then we are carrying forward from 2026, the participant share of project development programs in Caldwell and Eagle. The Caldwell project is underway, got started in the 4th quarter, but we do expect to carry that over. And then the Eagle project is still pending going under contract. The last section for revenues is our draw from fund balance. These are our Communities in Motion implementation grants, which we'll talk about later in this meeting, budgeted about $100,000 for those. And then we have local match on those various special projects that I mentioned that are federally funded, and then a draw from fund balance to cover the shortfall in our budget. So we are continuing to pay close attention to that amount as we pull our fund balance down, but we're well over the floor of fund balance that is set by the Finance Committee for a reserve. Moving up, high chart. So just a quick summary, about 68% of our funding is from our federal grants, 20% from dues, and the remainder from those other sources. This is pretty typical for us. We're right around these percentages each year, a little bit higher on federal funding in fiscal year 27. Expenses on the right side of the page, our largest expense item is the salaries and benefits for our 19 professional staff. We are not planning to add any positions. We are fully staffed at 19 folks right now. We have included a cost of living adjustment for all staff, including the executive director, of 3%. My figure up there was the June CPI number, and the July CPI number is also 3%. So right in line with what we're proposing to keep up with inflation. We have a merit pool of 2% for all employees except the executive director to recognize a performance. Those will be awarded by the executive director based on performance. Then we have the amount needed to cover what was approved by the board in June for the executive director's adjustment. And then we also are planning on a 3% increase in benefits. We know that our health benefits will increase by 3%, and then we have an allowance for the other benefits such as disability insurance and so forth. We're not expecting any increases in Percy. And then for 2027, calendar year 2027, we have added a cost share for medical premiums for covered spouses. Currently Compass covers 100% of that cost, where we're adding in that cost share to help as a cost containment measure. Next up on that page is our indirect expenses. They have come down just a little bit from fiscal year 26. Primarily, that reduction is in the amount for our third-party IT providers. But these are our general office expenses, insurance, audit costs, the cost of the building and so forth. So coming down just a little bit. And then the last section is our direct expenses. So these can vary quite a bit from year to year, depending on what projects we have available. And they typically have federal dollars associated with them. So up there at the top, we have our Communities in Motion 2055 expenses, continuing on those, and some unprogrammed dollars that we will carry forward into fiscal year 28. Wrapping up the Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation project, working on the performance measure framework update, a small allocation for our bike counter program, mainly supplies and software, some outreach on the TIP, our project development program, which Matt will talk about shortly. That includes both $150,000 in new projects for fiscal year 27, as well as the carry forward of those two from 26. Some dollars to support our grant research activities if we need to gather data or do other supportive activities for a federal grant application. And then finally, on this page, our implementation grants coming out of fund balance. We have our fiscal impact tool, as I mentioned, there are federal dollars associated with that program. Our outreach expenses for our communication education program, our government affairs consultant to help support those activities. The transportation priorities pool, we do have that, those federal dollars supporting that as well. Training and development for staff, support of our committees, some technical support for our regional travel and demand model. The transportation system and management operations and smart corridors study, direct dollars associated with that. And then those last two line items are primarily our orthophotography flight, which is $125,000, and then the software that supports our various technical activities makes up the bulk of those last two lines there, for a total of about 2.7 million in direct dollars. So just a quick look at our fund balance. As I mentioned, we are watching that very closely, and it is well above the $1 million floor set by our finance committee, but we are starting to see that draw down. So continuing to watch that closely. Expect to end fiscal year 27 with about 1.7 million on hand. That is the end of my comments, but again, happy to answer questions on any part of our Unified Planning Work Program and budget.
Thank you, Meg. Is there any questions from anyone? Go ahead.
Bless you.
Can you turn your mic? Oh, she doesn't have a microphone. Give her a microphone.
Okay,
There you go.
that's better. I have one question on one of the line items. It's our direct operations and maintenance, and it looks like we're changing from about 143,000 to about a little over 600,000 in Rev 3. And I believe this is due for receiving grant funding, but I just wanted to confirm.
For me, but so our that very last line, direct operations in 27 is about 143,000. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so we're moving from the 605 to 143. So
Right. It can vary quite a bit from year to year, depending on what we have planned. But most of that is our software expenses. We have proprietary software to support the TIP. We have software that supports the regional travel demand model and so forth. So that's most of what that is. In fiscal year 26, we were holding our carry forward for Communities in Motion 2055 down there because it was unprogrammed dollars, but kind of moved out of that section. So, but those expenses are primarily software and they recur from year to year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board or from anyone on the bridge? Any questions? I hear no questions. Do you have a proposed motion?
Make a motion. I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair. I just want to preface it by saying I appreciate the cost of living for the employees and maintaining a competitive benefits for the staff, I think is important for such a small agency. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that the Compass Board approve. I just had a resolution. Okay. Locked up on me here.
Up on the screen. Okay.
Is it on the screen? Oh, there we go. Adopts Resolution 14-2026 approving the FY 27 Unified Planning Work Program and Budget.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, we have moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if there be any? No opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next we'll have the approval of the FY 27 Communities in Motion Implementation Grants and Project Development Program Projects. Okay, and Matt Carlson is going to give us a report. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Matt Carlson, Principal Planner here at Compass. Today, I will be presenting the fiscal year 2027 Communities in Motion Implementation Grants and Project Development Project Rankings. This is seeking your approval and is an action item. We will go over the ranking process, the final rankings, and next steps moving forward. The Compass Resource Development Plan identifies member needs driven from the Long Range Plan Communities in Motion 2050 through the application process. And then we funnel those needs into the appropriate funding sources. Today before you are the Communities in Motion Implementation Grants and the Project Development Program Project Rankings. The Communities in Motion Implementation Grant Program provides direct support for local important projects that help reinforce the global regional goals established by Communities in Motion. The grant program specifically addresses 3 tasks identified to help achieve these goals: provide better access to public transportation, bike and pedestrian facilities, invest in town centers, downtowns, main streets, and existing infrastructure identified in the Long Range Transportation Plan, and develop specific area plans for activity centers consistent with Communities in Motion and plan integration of alternative transportation systems. The Project Development Program assists Compass member agencies secure transportation funding by taking their member agency ideas and turning them into a well-defined project with cost estimate, a purpose and need statement, an environmental scan, and a public involvement plan to ensure readiness for funding. Well-defined scoped projects strengthen grant application and increase the probability of those projects being delivered on time and on budget. We solicit these applications in the fall with a second round of applications in the spring. The Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, or RTAC, did a paired comparison ranking between June 3rd and June 17th, and then they recommended the final rankings at their July meeting. Now the project rankings are ready for approval by you. The evaluation criteria is structured around the regional vision and goals in the Long Range Transportation Plan Communities in Motion. The criteria provide an objective evaluation of these projects and can help foster conversations and compare the projects between each other. For the Communities in Motion implementation grants, we received 5 applications from 5 member agencies: the City of Middleton for the Willis Road pedestrian crosswalk, the City of Boise for the Alpine and Latah interim safety improvements, the City of Nampa for a bicycle and pedestrian map update, the City of Wilder for a chip seal project, and the Ada County Highway District for a bike map update. Now before you are the rankings for these applications after RTAC did their paired comparison with the number of times the project was selected as that score in the second to furthest right column. We have $100,000 budgeted in this program from the budget that you just approved with Meg's item. And the green line shows the funding cutoff. But we rank these projects all the way down the list to ensure that if, for some reason, a member agency were to withdraw their application, then we could go down to the next project on the list. For the project development program, we received 3 applications from 3 agencies: the City of Middleton for the Willis Road and Hartley Lane intersection improvement, the City of Boise for the Amity Pathway feasibility study, and Boise State University for the Friendship Bridge study. Here are the rankings for the project development program applications with the paired comparison process selections in that column. We have $150,000 budgeted for this program, which you previously approved in Meg's item, and we can fund all 3 of these projects. So we now have an understanding of the project's final rankings, and you, as the board of directors, have the opportunity to adjust those rankings if you choose. Following your approval today, we will begin negotiating agreements with these awarded member agencies in September, and then we will also have our first call for projects in September, and we encourage you all to apply. And if there are no questions, the recommended motion is in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that Compass Board of Directors approves the FY 2027 Communities in Motion Implementation Grant and Project Development Program project rankings.
Second.
Okay, you've heard the motion. We have 2 seconds. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, the Amity Road project, I was really thrilled to see that here. It's, we've been pushing that string in the southeast neighborhood of Boise. A lot of credit to their former secretary whose son was hit on trying to cross Amity Road. The city has, over the years, has bits and pieces, and it's time we sew up this quilt and get it done. So I'm just really going to support the motion. Really happy to see that project there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
First, I really have to state that I'm thrilled to death with our rankings for the city of Middleton. That this will really help us with 2 vital pedestrian type situations, and I'm not sure how we got to 1 on both of them, but I'd sure like to find out so I can do it again.
All right, well, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I also want to extend my thank you for the grant that's being offered for the city of Boise for the temporary improvements at Alpine and Latah. They're definitely needed. A lot of construction happening there. It's an interesting intersection with a railroad. We got a grade school nearby, and this is going to help to make sure that we have a safe travel for our pedestrians, our kids that are going through that direction. So thank you.
Thank you. We are always in favor of safe travel for families and kids. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'm calling for the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if there be any. Hearing no opposition, thank you. No motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, I did. All right, our next item is designated as item C. It's approval of the updates of the Transportation Improvement Program. And we'll have, Tony is going to give us an update. Go ahead, Tony.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair and members of the board, I am Tony Tisdale, the Resource Development Team Lead. And this item is to talk about TIP policies and procedure updates. So today we'll provide a brief overview of the previous guidance that we've had for how projects and ideas move through the process and get awarded funding, especially through the federal funding process. Matt just talked to you about the process for ranking projects for Communities in Motion implementation grants and the project development program. And this kind of takes it to the next step for the federal program guidance on how projects move forward. We also tie the federal grants federal funding that comes into our region to the goals and vision of the long range transportation plan. And those are funded through the Transportation Improvement Program known as the TIP. So today we'll go into a summary level description of each of the policies and procedures that help guide the process of funding the federal processes. Everything from the way we update the program each year through the update cycle to balancing current year funds all the way to the geography that is eligible for each of the funding sources that come to our area that we manage. So we review these policies annually, and as we process changes throughout the year, we sometimes notice inconsistencies or maybe some additional criteria that would help clarify the process. And as we were explaining our multiple policies to Craig, our new executive director, he requested that we simplify the reporting of these many policies that we had. So we completely reformatted all of the policies and incorporated the procedures that we had to make it really simple to find all of the information that was tied directly to TIP funding. So there are only a few substantive changes, but as you can imagine, as we combined all of these, there were a whole lot of minor ones. We provided those substantive changes in your memo, and I will go through those as we go through the changes today. So starting with the annual TIP update policy, this policy provides guidance for programming during the annual TIP update cycle. That's what we're going through right now, and we'll be talking about that update in the next item. The policy includes the steps to incorporate the numerous changes that we have, as well as adding new projects. And it really outlines the steps that our staff, as well as your staff, take as we develop the TIP. So at this time, there are no substantive changes to this policy. The amendment policy guides the process for amending or modifying the TIP, and this policy includes triggers of specific criteria that will allow staff approval of changes, or when the public is engaged, or when we need to come to you for approval of different types of changes. So there are two substantive changes in this policy. And criteria number 2, we're currently allowed to add or remove projects that are exempt. But as we went through this process, we realized we couldn't change them. And so an exempt project is typically a safety project or operational project on roadways. Most public transportation, sidewalks, studies, and planning are the types of projects you see with these exempt projects. So it really just makes that intent of being able to process these projects that are more minor as far as what the public is viewing. Still takes public involvement, but it doesn't take board action. But we can now change those projects as well as add or remove them. And in number 3, there's an additional footnote to the major changes that would allow the Compass Executive Director to determine the significance of a major change. The intent of this would be to allow the Executive Director to make that final call. The example that comes to mind is the $5 million limit. If we had an increase of $5.1 million on a $100 million project, it doesn't really change anything about the project, and it really creates more confusion for when the public sees that type of increase than waiving that to move forward. On the inverse, our executive director can also request additional public comment or board action if an action would require that additional review. So we could go either way with that, but this would allow a little bit of flexibility when it really would make it more confusing for the public to see certain changes and be involved. The balancing policy guides prioritization of funds through cost savings, programming changes, and the end of year and redistribution for current year projects in the STIP, in the TIP, in the programs that are administered by Compass. Those are the Surface Transportation Block Grant, or you might know them as STBG funds, Transportation Alternative or TAP, and Carbon Reduction Program known as CRP. These are allocated directly to the urban areas and administered by Compass. And this policy provides the criteria and prioritization for processing balancing requests. There is one change in criteria number 4. These are for projects that are originated outside of any of the programs that I just mentioned. Those could be eligible in certain circumstances, but they are considered a lower priority. And this substantive change provides consistency with the other criteria and allows that construction cost increase on current projects in the current year or those currently under contract to be a higher priority, and to also include advancing construction funds later on. The federal highway funding eligibility policy guides programming of federal highway funding in the Compass planning area for programs managed by Compass. This policy is focused on the geographic use of how funds are used within our area, and there are no substantive changes for this policy. The funding policy guides priorities for programming STBG funds in the Compass planning area boundary. This policy is transferring from being a Communities in Motion 2050 policy to really it's guiding how we use STBG funds when we're programming and balancing, and so it's being transferred over to the Transportation Improvement Program policies. So there are no substantive changes to this policy. The rural prioritization process policy in the MPO areas guides the process for prioritizing rural projects that will be applying for the local highway technical assistance council funding, certain programs that they offer, and allows up to 10 extra points by going through this process. For the MPO areas, this is only for Ada and Canyon counties and the rural areas within them. And there are no substantive changes to this policy. There is also a rural prioritization process for the non-MPO areas. This is for our new members, Boise and Elmore counties that are outside the MPO areas. We are currently working with representatives from Boise County and Elmore County to develop a similar, or it may end up being a totally different process within their areas to also allow those extra points through certain programs that LTAC offers. So once this policy is developed, we will be bringing it to you. Currently, this is a placeholder, and we will ask for an amendment to this policy at that time. The changes to the TIP procedure guides how project sponsors request changes to their projects in the TIP. This allows your staff to know how to reach out to us to ask for changes and provides all of those procedures to do so. The delivery of federal aid projects provides guidance on the delivery expectations. The Compass Board several years ago in 2012 set a policy of March 1st being the deadline for federal aid obligations. And that allows us to have additional time if we're not able to meet those deadlines, that we still have time to use the funding that comes to our area. So at this time, there's no substantive changes to these procedures other than the contact information within them. The Urban Balancing Rulebook was added as an addendum. These are represents the rules agreed upon by the executive directors of all the large urban areas throughout the state of Idaho. There are 6 of them, and the rule book is the rules that they follow for the shared funds within the large urban areas through that Federal Highway Administration. This is for information only. These are rules that are agreed upon by all of the agencies across the state that are within that 50,000 to 200,000 population group. And it's included mainly for the Nampa urban area so that all members in that area understand the rules going forward for balancing. And I will stop here for any questions, and I have a recommended motion as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the board? Okay. You've seen the proposed motion. I'd accept the motion. Yes.
Thank you. I'd get a microphone. I move we approve the consolidation and changes to the TIP policies as presented.
You heard a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion, so I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There it is. In that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the adoption of resolution 15-2026, amending the Communities in Motion 2050 and resolution 16-2026, approving the FY 27 and 20 through 33 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Austin and Tony. Austin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for saying that one, so I didn't have to. This one is a bit of a mouthful, but Mr. Chair, members of the board, Austin Miller, Principal Planner and Planner Team Lead. With me today is also Tony Tisdale, our Resource Development Team Lead. She'll be joining me to close out this presentation. This item will ultimately be seeking your approval of a Communities in Motion 2050 amendment, as well as the fiscal year 2027 to 2033 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. I'll go ahead and get us started overviewing the Communities in Motion 2050 amendment. Then I'll pass it on over to Tony to discuss the TIP, the public comments that we had received, as well as the timeline. So why would we amend Communities in Motion? Well, regional transportation plans such as this, they identified the transportation needs throughout the region, looking a minimum of 20 years out into the future. However, these plans are required to be fiscally constrained. Because of this, Communities in Motion includes a list of funded projects or projects that we've identified a anticipated funding source. We also have unfunded projects or needs that we've identified, but we don't yet have an identified funding source to go with them. As local plans, programs, budgets change, periodically we need to update Communities in Motion as well to make sure that we're remaining consistent. Also, in doing so, this enables us to begin work on these much needed projects for our region. So this amendment specifically adds one new project to that funded list, as well as reclassifies a project from that funded list to the unfunded needs. The new project being added is actually a continuation of an Access to Opportunity competitive grant in 2023, which provided funding through the design phase of this project. This amendment would then go a step further and fund construction along two specific segments. So 43rd Street in Garden City, from Ustick to the Boise River. This would provide rehabilitation of the roadway, as well as adding multimodal facilities where they don't currently exist along that stretch. And the second segment is Kent Street, also in Garden City, between US 2026 or Chinden Boulevard to Allworth Street. Again, adding those multimodal facilities to help connect the active transportation network in this area. This amendment would also reclassify a portion of Ustick Road, specifically from Franklin Boulevard to 11th Avenue in the city of Nampa and unincorporated Canyon County. The project has been identified as funded in Communities in Motion 2050. However, funding is no longer anticipated in the near term, so we're proposing to reclassify to that unfunded list. The project itself will remain as a priority in Communities in Motion 2050, but just with that unfunded status tied to it. So the unfunded project would retain that original intent of providing 2 travel lanes in each direction, a center median barrier, and a multi-use pathway on both sides of the roadway. This item before you, as was noted in the name, does include ultimately 2 resolutions. The first of which is to amend Communities in Motion 2050, as I just outlined. And the second resolution to approve the TIP, I will now pass to Tony to discuss a little bit further.
Good. Thank you, Austin. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks. So the he took my technology. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The draft fiscal year 2027 to 2033 TIP project list was developed starting early this year, working closely with all of our member agency staff and RTAC, especially Idaho Transportation Department, Valley Regional Transit. We believe that there are all of the agencies that have been involved. There were some pretty major changes to the state funding, as many of you are aware this year, but I believe that everybody is fully aware of the changes that were made, as well as the reasons why they had to be made throughout the process. So we did have public comment between July 1st and July 31st. We had 29 people comment, 15 were directly related to the Communities in Motion amendment, and 24 comments were directly related to the draft fiscal year 27 to 2033 project list. We do have all of those comments. This is just a brief example of the ones that we received. We do have those in the supplemental in the board web pages. We do encourage all of you to read these comments as projects are being developed. They were very thoughtful coming in. Many of our public has commented on these projects. However, there were no changes based on the comments received through this process at this time, but very thoughtful comments that we received. Compass also developed a list of projects in Boise and Elmore counties just for informational purposes. It is provided in the supplemental portion of the board website. This list will not be part of the TIP, but it is considered an unofficial list All of these projects are included within the statewide transportation improvement program known as the STIP on ITD's website, but we wanted to pull those out for the convenience of Boise and Elmore County representatives. The TIP is expected to have final approval by the end of the calendar year. Staff is requesting your approval today to move forward. And then the state is expected to approve the statewide program on September 17th. And then those submittals of the TIP and the STIP will be made to the federal agencies either late November or September or October. And then we expect final approval by late November or early December. So that will give us our final approvals to move forward. Until that time, our current fiscal year 26 through 2032 TIP will be in place. When we make amendments, we'll be amending both of them. So in case you see that coming forward, we'll still be running forward with 2 TIPs until both of them until the new one is approved. So I will stand now for any questions and invite Austin to come up as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tony or Austin? Before we proceed. I see no questions. Any questions? Nope, nobody's raising their hand. All right. I would accept a motion then.
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead.
Everybody's quiet.
Make the motion.
The Compass Board of Directors adopts Resolution 15-2026, amending Communities in Motion 2050, and the Resolution 16-2026, approving the FY 2027, the 2033 TIP.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Well, second.
All right, we're at 3 now. We'll have to figure it out. All right, thank you. Okay, any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank Tony and Austin for their work. And just to remind Tony, I think it's almost exactly 20 years since you took over the TIP from me. So you're doing great work. Thanks.
You're a TIP alumnus?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay, well, good enough. If there's any further discussion or comments, hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. We're progressing now that we're down to our information discussion item. Craig will walk us through the state and federal legislative positions. Craig, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is just to introduce to the board and remind members of the board what the state and federal legislative positions were last year and anything that we have potentially under consideration for changes or updates this year. It's a fairly straightforward discussion, at least on my end, although happy to entertain any thoughts or comments that any of the members of the board would have. So given the state of the legislature and the general positions that we had at the state level for last year, as things stand right now, I'm not approaching the executive committee, and the way this process will work, just as a quick reminder, the executive committee will make a recommendation to the board for the October meeting to adopt the state legislative positions and the federal legislative positions. So I'm not at this point planning to make any recommendations for any new policies or removing any policies or position statements. The one change that I do think we will make or recommend, and we are in the process of updating this number, is in the first paragraph of the state legislative positions document. We note that the annual gap in funding needs versus available funds for our region is $193 million. That number we think is low. It's outdated and it's low, and so we're working on revising that. But for example, given the state legislative actions during the session earlier this year, ITD was kind of, their hand was kind of forced to cut back on their bonding program. They haven't finalized that yet, but that's generally the picture that we're seeing. And as a result of that, that gap is probably as much as $100 million more a year for what we can reasonably anticipate and have a good sense that there will be funding available. The other thing that I'd note is that the $193 million annual shortfall number was calculated prior to House Bill 389 going into effect. And as a result of that, I know a lot of the local agencies, particularly in Canyon County and then, of course, Ada County Highway District, have been having to, confront the issues around, what they can do with budget and growth and so on. And so we think that that number is also that the gap is probably a little bit higher just as a result of that as well. But we'll have new calculations and be able to demonstrate what those numbers look like. And we'll show that to the executive committee in September so that when they come in for the October, when the board sees this item again in October, we'll probably have an updated number there. So we're not anticipating any other changes, new policies or recommendations to those items. Although, like I said, feel free to reach out if there's something that you'd like to discuss, a particular issue or item that we can look into and try to figure out if it fits under the lid of what's currently in the document or whether it might merit something that's new. And then on the federal policy side, same basic situation, not anticipating any new policies or recommendations or preferences that the board would be seeking. I will just as a brief update, as Meg noted in her presentation, a new bill has been introduced, but we're not anticipating any actual action at the federal level for the rest of this calendar year. And in fact, the Senate, I think the Senate has just passed just before they went into recess a week and a half ago, a continuing resolution that extended funding levels for most of the formula fund programs and the current transportation law through December, early to mid-December. So it would carry it past the election day. Usually when that happens, there's another series of continuing resolutions. What tends to happen is the time frame of each continuing resolution gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And so if we're looking at one right now that is about 4 months, the next one is probably in the 2 to 3 months one, and then it takes another month to 2 months, and it just kind of keeps getting shorter and shorter. I think the shortest one that I've seen was one that was about a 12-hour continuing resolution to get past a midnight deadline and allow them to finish up negotiations the next day and take everything to the two floors and get it all completed. So again, we're not recommending any changes there as well. But if there is something that any of the members are aware of at the federal level, and again, just reminding you at the state level as well, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll try to examine how we can work those in to get to the executive committee for their consideration. And this is just a good opportunity to just briefly comment a little bit about what we're anticipating for a state legislative strategy approach next year. So this past session, we had good engagement, and we're planning a similar type approach this year. We'll have a consultant who's essentially working as a lobbyist on behalf of Compass's adopted positions. We will at an earlier date this year, so probably late November, so before the Thanksgiving break, we're anticipating trying to do a regional legislative forum to talk about transportation issues with members of the Valley's legislative delegation. And then we will coordinate again with the other metropolitan planning organizations around the state. There's one day, usually in February, where they're all in town to meet here for that urban balancing process that Tony outlined as an appendix to your newly adopted TIP policies and procedures. And so on that day, we'll we'll have that sort of be the target date for when we will do another legislative reception like we did last year or earlier this year. It was very well attended and a well-regarded event. And so we'll be looking to have a similar type event and try to raise the profile of these issues as well at that event. So With that, I'm happy, like, this is a discussion item, so I'm happy to hear any thoughts or concerns or additional issues. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me offline as well to talk through anything that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussions or questions from the board? Okay, none? Well, we'll move on then. We'll go ahead to the executive director's report.
So, Mr. Chair, your packet includes the staff activities report, the air quality status report, the RTAC attendance report, and any of the administrative modifications that we've handled during the gap between the last meeting. I have no additional comments to add to that.
Any questions from the board? All right, no questions from the board. The next item is our next meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 26th of October. Okay. All right, any other discussion before we adjourn? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.